Welcome back in. Hope all of you are having a fantastic morning. We are rolling through the Friday edition of the program, joined now, as we often are, in the first hour of the program, my buddy Lance Taylor, 94.5 Jocks down in Birmingham, at the Lance Taylor on Twitter. LT, knock on wood furiously. I feel like we have to do this all the time. But right off the top, it's a pretty good feeling, I would imagine, for the SEC to be able to have a third straight week of zero issues with every team being able to play, right? We got the first 2 weeks of the season in, 14 different games. I'm knocking on wood because there's always the possibility, it being 2020, of things going awry. But that's a pretty good feeling, don't you think, for the SEC to be getting into their third week without having to reschedule any games, without having to change anything. And that's almost 30% of the season, given the fact that everybody's playing 10 games.
Yeah, I am knocking on wood because your Titans in the NFL, we thought that we had that totally dialed in and airtight. Obviously, there's been breakouts there. So, this thing can get off the rails quickly. But, yeah, I agree with you. So far, so good. And zero cases reported. That's awesome. We've had, I don't know what's come out of the limited crowd capacities we've had. Now, I think Georgia kind of busted their 20% capacity Saturday night against Auburn. I don't think there was any doubt about that. It's amazing nobody's really talking about that. I don't care because I had the Bulldogs minus 6.5. But, yeah, so far so good.
What's up with Auburn? Just in general, they've been an erratic program. But when you look at the game that you just mentioned against Georgia, Auburn is 3-13 in their last 16 against Georgia. That's pretty unbelievable, right? To have that level of futility, and they got absolutely dominated by Georgia. What did you see in that game, and what did it tell us about both teams going forward?
Well, 1A and 1B would be Kirby Smart owns Auburn. He's 5-1 now against Auburn. Auburn scored 14 or fewer in 5 of those 6 games. And then the second part of that, Georgia's just got a dominant defense. Lights out. It was arguably the best defense in college football last year. It's a defense now that I guess you can make the argument, again, they're allowing an SEC low 8 points per game after holding limited Auburn to 6 points. I just think they've got a great defense. Now, do I believe Stetson Bennett the fourth is a quarterback that's going to lead them to a championship? I'm not buying into that yet. But Auburn's just got average play at quarterback. They can't run the football. And when Gus Malzahn has had success going back to 2013, and then again in 2007 where they made a run to the SEC championship game, they were able to run the football, and they had a premier back. And I think Tank Bigsby, the freshman, can be that guy ultimately. But when, Auburn goes for 39 on the ground and Zamir White outrushes them with 41 in the first quarter, it's a big problem. And Gus Malzahn brought Chad Morris in to fix this. And, I don't know if Chad Morris is the answer. When you start to look at Chad Morris at Clemson, he leaves there. Clemson seems to be in a better spot now. Chad Morris goes to SMU. SMU seems to be in a better spot with Sonny Dykes now. Chad Morris goes to Arkansas. They didn't win an SEC game under him, and it only took 2 games for Sam Pittman to win one. So, I don't know where the stock right now is on Chad Morris.
We're talking to Lance Taylor at the Lance Taylor 94.5 Jocks in Birmingham. We're going to have a conversation top of hour 2. We tend to do our draft games, right? Like, what NFL games are you most excited for? What college football games are you most excited for? For college football, let's start there. Where do you think the biggest and best games are? And I'll go ahead and give you a couple. Tennessee, Georgia, do you expect it to be a real battle? Miami on the road against Clemson, what do you expect? And Florida, Texas A&M. I would say those are the 3 that really kind of stand out to most people. What do you expect there?
Yeah, well, let me start with your Tennessee Volunteers first. One thing I could say about them is they might have advantage at quarterback. Again, I don't know what you're going to get week in, week out with Stetson Bennett. Like, he did come in and calm everybody down against Arkansas, and they played a pretty solid second half there. And look, and he was efficient in his first career start. The numbers weren't great, but you didn't really expect him to be great. But Garantano, the way he's playing right now, you could at least make the argument Tennessee's got the better quarterback. Tennessee's finally running the ball with the combination of Gray and Chandler. And Tennessee's playing clean football. 3 penalties, no turnovers against Missouri. I don't expect them to beat Georgia. That number, to me, may be a little inflated. That could end up being a great game. It could be a Georgia 21-point win just based on the fact that, you look at these two the last couple of times they've played, it really hasn't been close. Georgia 3 straight wins by a combined score of 122-26. I think Tennessee will play them a little tighter than that. I don't know if I've got a huge expectation for that game. On the other ones, I'm buying into Miami. I don't know why. I didn't buy into him with Martin Rick. I really didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think Manny Diaz is the best coach in the world. I think he knows defense, but they've got a dynamic quarterback in Derrick King. And I just think with Miami improved on special teams, we know that they've got a really good defense. I think they can keep this close. Trevor Lawrence doesn't turn the football over, but Miami, who loves to turn people over, if they can somehow find a way to be plus in turnover margin, I think this thing goes deep into the fourth quarter. It reminds me, Clay, 2017, Lamar Jackson, that hot offense for Louisville, rolled into Death Valley. It was a one-possession game. I think we get that type of game on Saturday night in Death Valley. As far as Florida, Texas A&M, love this Florida offense. Not 100% sold on Todd Grantham's defense, but A&M looks to be a complete mess right now. You know, they tie up Alabama 14-all early in the second quarter, and then Alabama just dust them. Kellen Mond, to me, is an average quarterback. Kyle Trask will outplay him. But, you know, that number's so weird, sitting at 6.5. I think Texas A&M might play them tight. But for whatever reason, Jimbo's just not been good against top 10 teams lately.
All right, I'm fascinated to watch all three of those games. I gave out gambling picks yesterday. If you missed it, I like Tennessee, I like Miami, and I like the over in the Texas A&M Florida game. What do you think about Kyle Trask as a Heisman Trophy winner? So my argument would be, and I'm curious how you would assess, it's going to be very difficult to have a guy suddenly parachute in like Justin Fields, play 8 games potentially if everything goes well in the Big Ten, and overtake a Trevor Lawrence or a Derrick King if suddenly there's something crazy that comes out of an upset there for Miami, or a Kyle Trask, because those guys are already going to have posted pretty impressive numbers. And so I tend to think this is going to end up Kyle Trask versus Trevor Lawrence to win the Heisman, trying to look ahead. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, we did who would be invited right now to the Heisman Trophy ceremonies, you know, and we only did 3 seats, and I actually had Trevor Lawrence number 4. No offense to Trevor Lawrence, but really hasn't played anyone, and Trevor Lawrence, the expectation's so much. I mean, he's going to have to do so much to actually
He's
win
the
a
Heisman
Trophy.
favorite right now, is if you look at the betting markets.
But you know, I think if I was putting 3 there, it would be Kyle Trask. I think I would go Mac Jones, who leads all quarterbacks in QBR right now. And then I think I would put Zach Wilson, a guy that's completing 83% of his passes, games that aren't even close. I know BYU really hasn't played anyone at all. But Zach Wilson's a hell of a quarterback, and nobody knows about Zach Wilson because it's the only team playing out west right now. But back to Kyle Trask winning a Heisman Trophy, I think he's got a legitimate shot. I mean, Dan Mullen is – one of the top 2 or 3 play callers right now in college football. You would have said maybe behind Lincoln Riley up until the disastrous last couple of weeks in Norman. The only problem you might have with Kyle Trask, Clay, is Kyle Pitts, you know, his own teammate. Yep. And Kyle Pitts is so dynamic, and he's already got 6 touchdowns through 2 games. And you know, voters love to be so different and go against the grain. We saw when Charles Woodson took out your boy Peyton Manning in one of the most unfair Heisman votings of all time. If Kyle Pitts at tight end was able to have 20 touchdowns this year, which is a possibility. I mean, if you watched him play in 2 games, that's a legit possibility. You know, I could see Kyle Pitts maybe take votes away from Kyle Trask.
Do you buy into there's a couple more questions on college football, and the SEC in particular? We're down to only 4 undefeated teams: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia and Tennessee are obviously playing against each other. After the 3rd week at minimum, Florida could lose on the road against A&M too, and then we got Bama playing against Georgia. We could be in a situation where there's hardly anybody that's undefeated in the SEC by mid-October, right? I mean, that's not a crazy presumption if you look at the schedule. How do you think that's going to play out? Do you buy in that there's a gap between those top 3 and everybody else, between the top 5 or 6? How would you assess the SEC through 2 weeks, top to bottom?
Yeah, I mean, I've still got to go that Alabama's your number 1 team. Based on the defense I've seen with Georgia, I mean, it depends. Are we in an era now in college football where offenses wins championships, or is it defenses? Again, Stetson Bennett scares me, and that's probably unfair to that kid. I just thought for sure a couple of months ago it was going to be Jamie Newman or J.T. Daniels, and J.T. Daniels gets cleared. I was excited about watching him play, and I'm just shocked that Stetson Bennett is the starting quarterback right now for the Georgia Bulldogs, but their defense is so good. I would go Alabama, I would go Georgia and Florida right there, and I think there's a separation between those 3 and everybody else.
I kind of agree with you. That's why I'm intrigued to see what happens with Tennessee on the road against Georgia, to see whether Tennessee's capable of playing up. I think they've demonstrated they can beat the bad teams. Now, can they be competitive with the good teams? That's the next step that they need to take. We're talking to Lance Taylor, 94.5 Jocks down in Birmingham. Let's go to the NFL. Are you a believer in the Browns at 3-1 as a legit playoff contender?
Yeah, I said before the season, I wasn't buying last year. And Freddie Kitchens is a nice guy with the Alabama ties, former Alabama started quarterback. I just thought that, at the end of 2018, he had a really good rapport with Baker Mayfield, and I thought it was a knee-jerk to give him that job. Kevin Stefanski looks like the real deal. In week one, they got a little overwhelmed by the Ravens, who hit on all cylinders. But since then, 3 straight 30-plus point games for the first time since 1968. And they're 3-1 for the first time since 2001, and it just looks like they're playing as a team. Unfortunately, with all of their balance, losing Nick Chubb is really going to hurt. Now, Kareem Hunt is a capable guy of coming in and giving you a lot of production at the running back position, but I like this Browns team a lot. Another problem for them outside of the Chubb injury is that everybody talks about the NFC West, and I'm a Rams guy, and I think that division is really, really tough. The AFC North is really difficult as well. When you look at Baltimore, you look at Pittsburgh, an undefeated team no one is talking about, and now you look at this 3-1 Browns team that can score a lot of points. But, yeah, I am buying with the expansion of the NFL playoffs to 7 teams now. I think the Browns are going to find their way there.
What about the Battle of Pennsylvania? The Eagles went on the road and got a really unprecedented win for a lot of people, even though the 49ers, I know, are beat up from a health perspective. And now the Steelers, who had to sit out for the Titans, they already had their bye week. They're around a 7-point favorite. That seems steep to me. What do you think, and what is pretty intriguing game?
Okay, so in 2017, before the injury, I was watching Carson Wentz in the Coliseum, and he had that fluke ACL injury where he's diving in the end zone against the Rams. They end up winning that game. Nick Foles takes over. No one thought Philadelphia had a shot. They go on to win Super Bowl 52. At that moment, I really believe Carson Wentz was trending to become the best player in the NFL.
He was going to be the MVP that year if he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, he was, Clay. And right now, I don't know about you, but he just seems like a really average quarterback. I mean, he's got 7 interceptions. That's the most in the NFL. He just turns the ball over nonstop. And you look at this Pittsburgh defense, they're only allowing 54 rush yards per game. That's the best in the NFL. I know 7 is typically a higher number when we're talking about NFL games. I thought the Eagles were lucky to get that win on the road against a banged-up San Francisco team. The Eagles aren't healthy either. I like Pittsburgh. I like the balance. I like Connor and Snell in the backfield. I think Roethlisberger's still one of the better, close to elite quarterbacks. And amazing stat for you here. Pittsburgh looking to start 4-0 for the first time since 1979, which is hard to believe with that great franchise.
That is pretty wild to think about in general. What games, if any, do you particularly love gambling this weekend, college football or the NFL?
Well, NFL, I'll start with Baltimore. I don't think they've really played a complete game since week 1 against Cleveland. It's a huge number at 13. I think you lay it against Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. I'll give Joe Burrow a lot of credit. Tough kid. He's gone 300-plus in 3 consecutive games. Cincinnati still is not a good football team. I think Lamar Jackson, although he's a little banged up, if he does come out and plays 100%, he is dominated in his couple of performances against the Bengals. So I do like Baltimore in that spot. I'm with you. I like the Miami Hurricanes. I think this is one of 2 ways. I think Clemson flexes up and says, okay, here's a team in the ACC everybody's talking about. Outside of Clemson, we're going to show everyone that we're still the alpha in this conference, and they win the game by 28. Or Miami takes it to a final possession. I think it's the latter. I think Miami and Derrick King being such a dynamic quarterback. And when we talk about Heisman, if Miami is able to roll in there, King puts up 300-plus total yards, and they get the win, Derrick King could be your Heisman frontrunner coming out of this week.
How wild is it that Derrick King and Kyle Trask were the same year at the same high school? I think it's Marvell High School outside of Houston, and they both played, right? I mean, this is kind of unbelievable that they would then end up potentially both at the Heisman ceremony if your logic there played out and he went on the road and had a great game. I mean, that's not crazy to think that 2 high school football teammates on the same team in the same year at the same position could both be in New York.
No, it's amazing. It's unheard of. I mean, it's almost up there with, two different brothers winning a Super Bowl championship, or two different brothers in the Hardballs coaching against each other in a Super Bowl. I mean, the probability of that is just, it's mind-blowing. And your friend Todd Furman informed us this week, which was crazy. I had no idea. Kyle Trask named after Kyle Field.
Yeah.
You think Texas A&M would trade Kellen Mond right now for Kyle Trask?
Well, I mean, the one more ironic one would obviously be, I know Sam Ehlinger's pretty good, but remember that string of quarterbacks that Texas had passed on that all wanted to go to Texas and then ended up, like RG3, Andrew Luck. There was a huge list of Texas kids who had wanted to go to the University of Texas that Texas had not taken. And that would be even more amazing. But it is crazy that he's literally named after the football stadium.
You know what's funny, Clay? So we've talked 20 minutes here, and we've talked about a bunch of different games in the NFL and a ton of games on the college football board for Week 6, and we have not even mentioned Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah,
that is
that's
how
a good
bad
point.
This season has begun for both of those. And I don't know about you, the Big 12 is done, and you can say what you want about Oklahoma State being undefeated. When you start to look at their schedule, I'll be borderline shocked if they don't end up with 3 losses. I mean,
it is wild.
Is totally gone.
It is wild that usually Texas-Oklahoma is such a huge game in college football, and you're right, we haven't even mentioned it. And honestly, Oklahoma is 0-2, we know, for the first time in over 20 years. Texas had no business winning that game against Texas Tech. These teams should be a combined 0-4 in the Big 12.
Yeah, which, that's just, it's mind-blowing. And
when you think about the structural advantages that those programs have over everybody else in the Big 12, for them to be sitting at 1-3 in a year and nearly 0-4 just shouldn't be possible to happen.
Yeah, it's inexcusable. And I thought Tom Herman was going to have a lot of success, and I think I even bet, and within 5 years he would have them in a college football playoff. And that's obviously not going to happen. For Oklahoma, I think Spencer Rattler, a couple of things. They haven't gotten the defense right yet. And Spencer Rattler is by far the worst quarterback of the 4 that Lincoln Riley has had thus far. But I don't know about you, but even after losing to a Sun Belt team in Week 1, I think Iowa State's probably the best team in the conference.
Yeah, I don't know what to feel about Oklahoma State. They had all the off-season tumult, and they didn't start the season very well against Tulsa. They are 2-0 in the Big 12. But that was a heck of a win for Iowa State. Their first win over Oklahoma at home in 60 years. Just think about all the older guys who probably watched all those games, who were big Cyclone fans, and how much they must have enjoyed it, and also how much they must have thought, down the stretch, we're going to find a way to lose this one. So to actually win it, pretty awesome. LT, we will talk to you.
If you like this, because you love to gamble, Clay, quickly, Iowa State 11-1 against the number in October dating back to 17. So the Cyclones love to cover in the month of October. Just throwing that out there for you.
Yeah, and you love to gamble, and people can find you where? Lance'sLocks.com?
Yeah, Lance'sLock.com. Really simple. Just check out the website. We've got everything up and available. I appreciate the plug there, Clay.
No worries. We will talk to you next week. Keep up the good work down in Birmingham. Good luck dealing with the vestiges of the hurricane that is expected to come through, and hopefully that Alabama-Ole Miss game won't be too impacted by the weather, because I think there could be some offensive pyrotechnics down there.
A bigger impact could be DirecTV. I don't know about you. When I get one small rain cloud over my dish, over my house, everything shuts down. So that's the only thing that's scaring me to death. I'd hate to be here for a full 12-hour Saturday of watching college football, and I can't see anything because of DirecTV.
That's why I've got Comcast.
Good for you.
By the way, Lane Kiffin seems to have gigged. I know I said last question, but Lane Kiffin seems to have gigged Nick Saban a couple of different times. And I was impressed that Saban seemed to take it with pretty good humor. What do you think the relationship is like between Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban now?
Obviously Nick Saban respects Lane Kiffin as a play caller. I was talking about, Dan Mullen being one of the best play callers in college football. Lane Kiffin is that too, if you've watched Matt Corral in this offense. I think the relationship, I think it's complicated, for Nick Saban to bring him in as the offensive coordinator, and you can't say it wasn't a success. 3 years, 3 SEC championships, a national championship, and a lost national championship. But Lane Kiffin did kind of get run off before one of those national championship appearances. And, this week Kiffin called him elderly. I know he was kind of joking. And Nick Saban, when he was asked about it, he took it the right way. But you just wonder behind the scenes how dominant Saban's been against his assistants, 20-0, and 18 of those games not even close. And this is an Ole Miss offense. And I said it on Monday, Ole Miss defense has already given up over 1,200 yards and 92 points in 2 games. if Alabama wants to score 70, they're going to score 70. And you just wonder, weather permitting, if Nick Saban just puts pedal down the entire time and really proves a point.
That's why I think the over in Bama is a great play here. I really do. I think there are going to be a lot of points scored. I think Bama hits them up and covers with ease, and I think they're going to score 50-plus almost without trying. LT, good stuff as always. We'll talk to you next week.
See you, Clay. Thanks.
That's at the Lance Taylor on Twitter. You can follow him there, 94.5 Jocks down in Birmingham.